What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another edition of Kyle's Big Board here, presented by the Straight Facts Podcast, the series where we take a topic, we rank it, and we count it down. I'm Kyle Sirik, joined by my wingman on these Big Board videos.
Yes,
That's my
sir.
man, James Jackson, Mr. Jimmy J himself. Before
Yes,
we get
sir.
into it, James, before we get into the topic, the list, you've been putting in work here on the YouTube channel, and now you're coming on for another video, man. This has been an awesome week for everyone who's been
Yes,
tuning
sir.
in. Go back, watch the old videos, stay around for this one. But how you feeling, man? You ready to do this one?
I'm good. You started out the episode Wednesday by saying the vibes were up, and I've been feeling that ever since you said that, man. Vibes were up. If you guys follow me on social media, you see that we had the content bussing this week on the YouTube page between this video, between our episode, between StatMat's deep dives, between Matt V's position rankings. Man, there's so much great content coming out on the YouTube channel. So I'm always hyped to get on a big board, bro. Let's do it.
Yes, sir. And this is the one that I've been waiting for all week because this is the one I'm on besides the full
Mhm.
podcast. So NBA playoffs are coming up. Let's give them the topic. The topic is the NBA power rankings for the playoffs. Just a
Mhm.
straight list. We did this for the NFL, if you remember, about 3 months ago. That was a fun video. So we're going to get right into it. James is here to tell me where I'm right, where I'm wrong. He's going to keep me in check because some of the
I'm
teams on
sure
this
I,
list, people aren't going to agree with.
I'm sure I won't God check you too much, bro. We'll see what's going on though.
All right, real quick, we're going to run through the 16 through 10, and then we'll go kind of team by team after that.
Mhm.
As we speak, we don't know who's going to be the 8th seed in each conference. So it'll either be the Cavs or the Hawks in the East. It's going to be the Clippers or the Pelicans in the West.
Mhm.
So I'm just going to put those teams in 15, 16. It could shift a little bit. I would see the Cavs more like a 13, but I don't think either of them are title contenders. So we'll just pick up on the 14 teams. We know we're in the playoffs at 14. I got the Denver Nuggets, and to be honest, it's just Nikola Jokic for me on that team. I think they're out first round. 13, I got the Bulls, really not coming in as hot as they were. They were much hotter at the beginning of the season. They got to face the Bucks in the first round. 12, I got the Timberwolves. They got a little edge to them coming into the playoffs. Got the bad boy feel behind them. They can make some noise. 11, I got the Raptors, which is a tough one. This 10-11 was tough for me to flip flop. So that's the
Mhm.
bottom of my list. Now we'll get into the top 10. At 10, I've got the Dallas Mavericks. They are the 4 seed, I believe, in the West. They're going to take on the Jazz in the first round of the playoffs. To me, this is Luka is pretty much the only player on the team. That's why I have him at 10. I've been talking about how I don't like this team's makeup. Really, their 3 best players are 3 guards that really can't play off the ball. Luka Doncic, Spencer Dinwiddie, Jalen Brunson. I think they do play well together, but this isn't really a team I even see getting out of the first round, or if they do, definitely not getting out of the second round. Now, Luka in the playoffs could be fun. I mean, we've seen him get into some really close series with the Clippers. Not
Mhm.
everything's gone his way early. I just don't think this is the year that the Mavericks get over the hump.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't help that he's going to miss game one of this series with his injury, and who knows when he even comes back. They haven't
Right.
even reevaluated him after that. For that reason, to be honest, I probably would flip flop them and put them number 11, and maybe put the Raptors number 10, just
Right.
because one, the form the Raptors have been in, they've come out of the bottom of the Eastern Conference, put themselves in the thick of things, and if the Mavericks don't have Luka, they're relying on their newest member, a guy who's been there for 20 some odd games, and Spencer Dinwiddie, to now lead them in the playoffs. And that's just not a great identity for your team. You're, like you said to start, they're already thin as it is, just having Luka. Remove him for, I mean, just one game and however long in the series, and now you're facing an even more of an uphill battle. I would love to root for the Mavs. I would love for them to do anything. I don't see it right now just because of what they're going in there with.
Yeah, and you said it there. That's why it was a tight one between the Mavs and the
Mm.
Raptors. I think a full strength Mavs with. I'm an optimist, so maybe I'm hoping Luka's going to play. Maybe not game one, but into the series. I would give the
Me
Mavs
too.
just a slight edge. It's very close between those two teams.
Yeah,
But
I'd
we'll
be really
move.
surprised if Luca misses the entire series. I'd be really
Yeah,
surprised.
I can't see it happening.
Yeah.
We'll go to 9. And this is the Utah Jazz, the team that's going to be facing the Dallas Mavericks, a
Mhm.
team that has had their same core going on year 3 now. Mike Conley is the only one that hasn't been there, but he's still going on year 2 with the Utah Jazz. And a team that's really been like a top 3 seed in the West that isn't this year, but I still think they've got that edge to them. To me, honestly, in the NFL vid, I labeled the San Francisco 49ers and the Cincinnati Bengals as disruptors. It's a little different in the way the NBA playoff works out. but I think the Jazz have a shot to be a disruptor. They get past this first round, then they most likely meet the Suns. And I'd be foolish to say they're going to beat the Suns, but don't let this Jazz team beat the Suns because then they're an issue. They're a problem in the NBA coming out of it. So this is a long shot, but that's why I have them at 9. But I think if they can, get hot in the playoffs, this team could surprise a couple people. Donovan Mitchell has been there, very young player, but really has been in the playoffs every single year and puts up insane playoff stats. I think he's almost a 28 per game NBA playoffs guy.
Goes Buku in the playoffs.
Gobert's doing his thing. Conley's there. I mean, they have the same pieces that we've seen float around in a second round exit every year. And I don't think they get over the hump, but I think they're definitely a top 10 playoff team to me. So I have them here at 9.
I mean, sure, and I give them off of what they've done in the past of the players who, we know who their players are and what they can be. They can be top 10. But yeah, don't let them beat the Suns. I'll be an emotional wreck. I might not even appear on the podcast if they beat the Suns. I'm down on the Jazz. Like, Kyle, tell me what about the Jazz is different? Like, tell me what they've done different, who they are. Hassan Whiteside's the biggest difference, and we talked about them on the pod earlier in the year, and I haven't seen regression, but I haven't seen progression. I've seen a plateau. Like, I haven't seen Donovan Mitchell get worse, but I haven't seen him get better. I've only seen Rudy Gobert improve his advanced metrics on the defensive end. I haven't seen him get better on the offensive end. They lost Joe Ingles with an injury, who was a key factor for them in the playoffs last year. So when I put all of this together, I see a team that, like, do they have the potential? What I think they can do is, like, yeah, they could, scare a few people, get past 2 rounds in the Western Conference playoffs and really make some noise. But is it tangible? Do I see it? Not really. We're banking on what we hope Donovan Mitchell can do. But I mean, have you seen Donovan Mitchell, scoring bunches this year?
Right. No, I completely agree with you. I mean, they're a 5 seed. So if you think big board wise, the 5 seeds are going to be the 9 and the 10 if you just go straight down the list. Yeah, so they're exactly pretty much where they're suited. What I will say, though, is we've seen them, get to the second round, be a somewhat competitive, not championship contender, but playoff contender, right? So they've had the experience that I'll always give an edge. I know at least what their worst will look like in the playoffs. Maybe they find something and they can hit a ceiling and, make some noise. But yeah, I mean, I have them slotted in at 9. This isn't a team I'm looking at early as a title contender, but you got to rank the team somewhere, and I think this is a fair spot to put the Jazz.
At the end of the day, 2 All-Stars, a very good coach in Quinn Snyder, who was the All-Star coach last year when they were the 1 seed. So you got to give them credit, right? You can't ignore those kind of things. But I think so many people are looking at the Jazz as like, okay, you've been in this spot for 3 years now. I want to see something new. Right. I don't know if they can give me new. I don't know if they can give me improved.
I don't know if they can give me new either. But yeah, we'll move on to number 8, and this one might surprise a couple people, because they are a 2 seed, and that's the Memphis Grizzlies. And let me kind of put a distinction here between 9 and 8, because this is a big gap among these top 8 teams here on this list. I think there's 8 really good teams in the NBA, and this is where it starts. Someone has to be 8, and to me, that's the Memphis Grizzlies. I am high on this team, but I'm high on so many teams in the East, and when you really have to pick a team that's kind of lacking experience, hasn't been there before, they've shown tremendous regular season, right? John Moran is taking a big leap. These role players are phenomenal, better than most role players on most NBA teams, and they play well as a unit. But going into the playoffs isn't a team I can trust. Phenomenal, you're the 2 seed, right? I think they get past the first round against the T-Wolves. Could be a very fun series, and they could even give the Warriors the series in the second round. And I know yesterday on the pod, I got bold and said the Grizzlies, are going to beat the Warriors in the second round.
Yeah, caught up in a moment a little bit.
Reflection. I've looked back on that take. I had to make my NBA playoff bracket today. So I did a little more research, really got my head more focused on these playoffs. And I think 8 is a suitable spot that I'm going to have the Memphis Grizzlies right here.
Yeah, I mean, you said it, man. I don't fault you at all for having them low, because you haven't seen anything of it yet. And it's like the playoffs, to me, in any sport, is an experienced man's game. I really think you have to go through it and take your lumps, earn your stripes before you're ready for a deep playoff one. We've only seen it maybe like a handful of times where the main guy goes through it the very first time and leads his team all the way to the promised land. Not everyone's going to be Joe Burrow and in his first playoff run go to the championship. It doesn't happen. So that's very okay where you have the Memphis Grizzlies and like you said, like there's a very small gap between 8 and the rest of them. And to be 8 when teams above you all have playoff experience, like think about the Grizzlies. Steven Adams is their veteran statesman, and ask Steven Adams about a conference finals. You're not gonna know what to tell you. Ask him about a deep playoff run. He's not gonna know what to tell you. So even he is in a new spot, and they're the number 2 seed. It's different when there's a target on your back and teams are coming for you. It's a much different game.
Yep. And don't get my rankings confused with the teams I'm rooting for here, because nothing more do I want to see than John Morant make a playoff run.
Of course. I think that would excite the entire NBA until the conference finals. He can make a run until the conference finals, and then it's
then he sees your Suns. Yeah.
No, he's got to stop.
We understood. We'll go to 7. And if you thought putting the 2 seed at 8 was a little surprising, how about putting the 1 seed at 7? Because that's where I have the Miami Heat. So if you've been counting, if you've been keeping up, yes, I have 4 more Eastern Conference teams above the number 1 seed in the East. And, it's just tough. The narrative around the Eastern playoffs all year is it's going to be probably the most competitive we've seen in the last decade, really on either side. I think there's so many good teams, so many evenly matched teams. And I think the Heat kind of get the bottom edge of that. We saw them last year really try to reignite the flame they lit up in the bubble, couldn't get there. Coming back with a good regular season, battled through some injuries. I'm just not sure I have a guy I can rely on when it comes playoff times here. Jimmy Butler has fallen asleep since the All-Star break. Now, I'm not concerned about him that he's going to play bad, but I'm also, not too high on the fact that he's going to be able to carry this team past really the second or third round and really make a playoff run here as a 1 seed. So in terms of, title contenders, everyone above here is people I can realistically see winning the title. And people agree with me. Vegas agrees with me. They're at 1 seed, but Vegas has them with the 6th best odds to win the NBA championship with 3 other Eastern Conference teams above them. And honestly, when you think about the whole thing, they do have a good team. Bam Adebayo is playing well. Tyler Hero is probably going to be the 6th man of the year. Kyle Lowry adds some veteran presence, but there's not a guy on that team that I can point to. And in the playoffs, I know you're going to go out and beat the other team. They're going to have that mentality, but I don't know when they get there on the court if it's going to show out how they think it will.
Yeah, star power matters. At the end of the day, firepower and star power matters in the playoffs. You got a player that can give me 30 on multiple nights? Because if you don't, you're going to fall short, because pretty much all the other 5 or 6 teams above you got a couple players that can give you 30 on a multiple basis if you really think about it. So if you're the Miami Heat, when you made that championship run 2 years ago, you were the best defensive team in the league. And when you look at them now, they're not even the best defensive team in their conference. Like the Celtics are the best defensive team in the league. Now, I do give the Heat a lot of credit that they maintain the top of the mountain all through the Eastern Conference. And even when the Celtics threatened to take the throne, it was short-lived. They only had the number 1 seed for 2 days, and then the Heat took it right back and said, we are here to stay. So I agree with you with the star power. I'm interested to see what Kyle Lowry does, because I think that's big, moving him into the point guard slot, getting PJ Tucker for defense. If you go all the way back to us talking about the Heat in the very beginning of the year, I was very high on those 2 moves for this moment. It's going to allow Jimmy Butler to do other things in the playoffs and not have to spend so much of energy doing the little things. So I do think we get a little bit more from Jimmy Butler, but, at the end of the day, Jimmy Butler and company is going to have to beat Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, or Joel Embiid and James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant. Can you do that? Can you beat that much firepower?
Yep. And Giannis and the Bucks, the
Giannis
defending NBA champion.
How did I forget that one? Giannis and Chris Middleton and company. Yeah, you got to have more firepower than all of them. And by the way, 3 of those 5 teams I just named can play just as good a defense as any team in the NBA. So you got to deal with them on that end too. I just don't know if the Heat have all that this year, but I don't know, man. The last time people slept on the Heat, they were in a Mickey Mouse championship. So maybe, I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't sleep on them. Maybe we shouldn't sleep on them too much.
Oh, man, that came out of nowhere. Like, they weren't even, They
were like the 5 seed that year.
Now there's a 1 seed who's been there 2 years ago. You're looking at a lot different narrative going into what this team is right now, right? So
For sure.
To me, I think I can confidently slot them at 7 in my power rankings. We'll move to 6 then. And you caught my little blurb there when I was talking about the Heat. These top 6 are my title contenders. These are one of these 6 teams in my mind is going to be the NBA champion in about a month and a half.
Trophy.
Yeah. So this is really tough. I don't even like having this team at 6, but I just think there's so many teams that are so evenly matched, and that's the Boston Celtics.
I don't like it.
It's so tough, James. Before I revise this list, before I put in a lot of work this afternoon, really getting everything together how I want it, Boston Celtics were at 3. So they have dropped to 6 upon a little reflection, but still a tremendous team, and it's going to be the most entertaining round 1 series between them and the Brooklyn Nets. And it's a toss. It's really a coin flip who's going to win that, but one team's going to have to win it. And I clearly have picked the Nets. If I have them higher, it'd be wrong.
Yeah, right.
It'd be wrong of me. But yeah, I mean, the Celtics, I want to be optimistic about this. I mean, they are my 6th team. They are one of my title contenders. Jason Tatum, we've now seen take a step up. Jaylen Brown is still a very consistent option at 2, really one of the better second options in the entire NBA. Marcus Smart provides not only that veteran, but he's been there forever. He's literally a Boston Celtic through and through. He's been there for the culture. He's played with all of these guys, and tremendous defensive player. Robert Williams being hurt is where I do take that drawback. I'm not sure they're going to be the best defensive team in the playoffs like they were in the second half of the NBA regular season. But nonetheless, I mean, if they do get past the Nets, 1, that would be a tremendous feat. And two, you're instantly like, okay, this is a top 3 team in the league. I just can't see it happen. I can see it happening, but I don't think it's going to happen. But I do think it'll be a lot more competitive than when they faced them in the first round last year and lost 4-1.
Yeah, I would say you're optimistic, but I don't know if you're confident, if that makes sense. Like, you're optimistic of what they can do, but you're not confident that they're going to do it. Yeah. I would tell you have a little bit more confidence in the Celtics, and I get it. You're looking at the first team that they got to play, and it's like, regardless of what seed they are, they got to play Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. They got to play the Brooklyn Nets. And that's hard to fathom anyone taking out the Brooklyn Nets in the first round. So I understand why you have them at 6. And then, to be honest, when you told me you originally had them at 3, I was like, that might be too high. Like 6 might be too low, but 3 might be a little too high. So if I have to choose one of them, I might choose 6 as well. I just want to give them credit for being the best defensive team in the NBA.
For sure.
There's a pattern of NBA champions. Most of them are the best defensive teams in the league. Ex-Nay, the 73-9 Warriors, or the Warriors with Kevin Durant. That's just a different conversation. But every team after that leads the league in defense. The Bucks did it last year. They're the best defensive team in the league. When you're that helps so much in the playoffs. And I saw a report today that there's growing optimism that Robert Williams will make a return. I'm not sure if it was in the first round or sometime in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. They get him back in whatever capacity, that gives me more confidence that they can be the best defensive team in the league again. And then we talked about firepower with the last team. Here's the firepower. Like, you got it. Jason Tatum, who's already put up 50 and 60 in elimination type games or in playoff type games. And Jaylen Brown, I know, can do it on any given night that Jason Tatum doesn't have it. So right. I'm high on the Boston Celtics. Our preseason episode, this was my team that was like, they're going to shock the NBA.
I remember.
It took them until January to prove me right. I looked like an idiot through like the first half of the season. But they've realized it. They've gotten all of it together. They're in their groove. I would not I give the Celtics a very good shot to beat the Nets in the first round, especially because the first 2 games are in Boston. That's huge. First 2 games being in Boston, a hostile crowd with Kyrie Irving, it's personal. It's personal a little bit for them.
And I agree. Like if I had to pick a series, like if you ask me the question, what series do you think is most likely to go to Game 7? It's going to be this one, or it's going to be the Mavericks versus the Jazz. Like, and now thinking about it, Luka might be out Game 1, maybe Game 2. So it's really going to be this one that I think, like, not that it's going to go Game 7, but probably is the most tightly contested with 2 powerhouse teams. Like, really a first round matchup we don't normally see in the NBA playoffs. And yeah, that did probably factor into my list and why I have them at 6. So
fair enough.
We will move on to 5, and we just talked about how tightly contested those teams are. My 5 team is the Brooklyn Nets. We saw what they did in that play-in game the other night. We saw what a full capacity Kyrie Irving can still look like. We didn't get the sample size we got this year, but he's back. He's going to play in every single game unless somehow they meet Toronto in the Eastern Conference Finals. He's back. Yeah, right. KD, turns it on in the playoffs. I still think and have thought for the last 7 years that's the best offensive basketball player in the world, and he's still playing at that level. There's growing optimism I saw today that Ben Simmons is going to come back most
Targeting game
likely.
four,
Game
targeting which
4,
was
game
before
5.
the series, right? So
And
if he
I'm not
gets
going to
game
put
four, he guarantees to get in.
And I'm not going to put too much stock into that. To me, though, I don't think that can hurt this team. I think that all that can do is help this team. But when they're clicking offensively, this is the best offensive team in the league, in my
Yeah.
opinion. The problem is I have major concerns with this team on the defensive side of the ball. And that's why I have them at 5. If you want to think that, they're going to just make every shot and they're fine winning 130 to 128, then sure, maybe they should be a little bit higher, but that's simply not how the playoffs work.
No.
So when it comes down to it, I think this is going to be a team that, wins basketball games, but really isn't going to blow teams out. I think they're going to play a lot of tightly contested games because I'm really worried about what they have on defense now. At the same time, if Seth Curry goes off on offense, if Andre Drummond keeps ascending to, 3 years ago, Andre Drummond, which he's kind of been playing at that level recently, and everything clicks on offense, because I know Kyrie and KD can carry you through a game. But if all these other guys start playing well, then yeah, this team gets very dangerous. And I don't care about the defense. But as it stands right now, the defense is a concern for me with the Brooklyn Nets, rather.
Yeah. Defense and depth is something like every coach would tell you need to make a deep championship run. It's two things that the Nets are lacking. But what they have is two players that nobody else can duplicate in the NBA. And you talk about Kevin Durant being the best offensive player in the world. They might got number 2. The things I've seen from Kyrie, like, it just can't be done by anybody else. And I watched him in the playing game start 10 for 10 from the field. Like if he's gonna shoot like that, and Kevin Durant's going to play like that, and they're going to pass like that, the game-winning play was Kyrie Irving getting into the lane, shot fake underneath, shovel pass to Nick Claxton, who slams it in to ice the game. If they're going to make the right plays like that, play in and play out, then yeah, Kyle, it's the one time where you can debunk defense in depth because they're too much on offense for anyone to deal with.
To that point, the Cavs still ended up being in that game down the stretch. Now, they never really closed the gap. They were playing from behind, but that was a closely competitive game. And not only did those guys go off, maybe Kevin Durant didn't have his biggest game, but Kyrie surely made up for that with how hot he was. But Bruce Brown played really well. Yeah. Nick Claxton played really well, and you're still only beating the Cavs by single digits. So there's reason for concern there on the defensive side of the ball.
Because that's still just 2 other starters. Like, there's still no depth, nothing coming off your bench. Seth Curry, had those 2 torrid starts, then got hurt and hasn't really been the same since he's come back from that injury for the Nets. So you're looking, and also if I'm looking at these power rankings, it's like who can make, a championship run. And that first round series is going to take a lot out of them. And if you don't have depth to kind of, allow Kyrie and Kevin Durant to ease back into it the next series, if they have to come out firing again in round 2, like at some point,
that'll be the Bucks round 2. They're going to have to be firing.
And you can only ask so much for it. And I'm going to ask that out of Kyrie and Kevin Durant, but you can only ask so much out of someone if they have to, do it on their own for 6-7 games against the Celtics and then have to try to go to Milwaukee and do it. It's tough, man.
Yeah,
That's tough. And it's crazy because the last time they were in this position, who are the 2 teams that they had to go through to get to the conference finals? It was Boston and Milwaukee. And we all know that KD is a toenail away from going to the conference finals. So.
Right. So with all the question marks, there's still 5 on the list. They're still a very dangerous team going into these playoffs. We're going to move on to number 4. And that's the Philadelphia 76ers. And if you've been keeping track, I just named 4 straight teams in the Eastern Conference. This East is loaded.
The trenches.
To me, a fully healthy Sixers team is capable of being the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference over the team I haven't named yet, over the teams I've just went through the list. The thing is, are we going to get that, right? This is a team down the stretch that has now been the center of focus, partly because the Embiid MVP narrative that it seems like he's going to come up short of, but also partly because their number 2 guy, James Harden, hasn't been playing up to standards. But I think James Harden, which we talked about on the pod yesterday, is going to start getting a lot more aggressive in the playoffs. He's only been averaging 13 shots a game since we traded for him, since he got to Philadelphia. I think we see that numbers kind of tick up to more like a 17, 18 on some nights, and really start, not deferring to these Danny Greens, not deferring to these George Niangs as much, and really taking control, right? And I also think Embiid What?
Why is it always Danny Green and George Niang he can't kick to? You said that on the pod.
Those are the two. Those are the two. I mean, you can you don't kick to Embiid, right? You just run the offense through him.
Right.
Maxey, when he kicks to him, Maxey shot the third best 3-point percentage in the league. So
Right,
the
so
two that have
it's-
really been costing the Sixers when James Harden kicks to them is George Niang and Danny Green.
Y'all, he been killing Danny Green these past 2 games, these past 2 days, man.
But yeah, I mean, you look at the team as a whole. Tyrese Maxey, honestly, I think is the most improved player in the league. John Morant's probably going to win the award. That's a conversation for another day.
Yeah.
But all around, you're looking at Maxey, who, I mean, has taken a giant leap and doesn't really, but the other guys on this team can be the 4th best player, and the Sixers can make a run, but he's going to be the 3rd best player. They have James Harden, they have Tobias Harris, and they have Joel Embiid. And not to mention, Tobias has been playing way better going into these playoffs than we've seen in the past. Very quietly.
Quietly. Yeah. Right. Wake him up.
So, yeah, I mean, I think I'm high on this team. Obviously, I'm a Sixers fan, but I think for good reason, because if it doesn't fall apart, like this team was in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, if they don't have 2 terribly bad games against the Hawks, historic playoff breakdowns, and the year before they got swept, and the year before that, they probably make the NBA championship if Kawhi doesn't 4-bounce a shot in. This team has been very close. Embiid's playing the best basketball of his career. And with Maxey and James Harden now on the team, this could be the best unit we've ever seen in recent history of a Sixers team in the playoffs. So should there be question marks? Yes, because we haven't really seen this team fully click on a consistent basis since James Harden has got there. We saw him get here for 3 games. They won 3 straight. And since then, it's been a lot of ups and downs. But I think we're going to see a run this year. I think this team is locked in and ready to make a playoff run, and really just in a different mindset than we've seen really since Jimmy Butler's been there.
Yeah. If you look at where you have them for, that's not unreasonable at all. You're saying, and if you're mixing matching, there's 1 definite Western Conference teams and a mix of either 1 more Western Conference teams or 2 Eastern Conference teams. You can have them behind. So it's not ludicrous to have them for. And I'm starting to come around a lot to your James Harden point. I've been just thinking about it and letting it marinate since you made that point on the pod last night that he's really going to kick it up in the playoffs. What have we seen James Harden been like bad? And in a overall in a playoff sense, yeah, we can all point back to Game 7 in 2018 against the Houston or against the Warriors, where he was terrible in Game 7. Yes, because he lost his running mate at the end of Game 5. Like he was playing with him through the whole playoffs.
And the rest of the team was terrible. It was the worst 3-point shooting streak of all time in the playoff game. Time. Yeah.
So it wasn't just him, James Harden, but then every other time, the most recent example I have of James Harden in the playoffs is him being the best player on a playoff team that has Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant on it. So, he was great in the playoffs last year. I got to think this is just a game that suits him. A slowed down, half court, a lot of pick and rolls. That's what's going to be great for him in the playoffs. And then why also I'm high on the Sixers is something Joel Embiid literally said today on Thursday. He had a press conference and said that, he was getting after people in practice and named Tobias Harris in particular and said, if Tobias comes and talks today, ask him. He got mad at me today at practice because I pushed him, because I know he can be better and we need him to be better. And then ended it by saying, I'm not here to worry about people's feelings. I'm trying to win a championship. I was like, that's it. There it is right there. Because that's what he didn't do last year with Ben Simmons. Is not hold him accountable to the point where I don't care how this makes you feel. I need you to do better. I know you can do better. And if Embiid is adopting that mentality, I think that's something that helps Tyrese Maxey. I think that helps something that doesn't coddle Tobias Harris. And James Harden's going to love that. James Harden's going to love you holding other people accountable. That's what Kevin Durant wasn't doing in Brooklyn. So I think that's going to pull people together. And it's also going to help take a little bit of pressure off Doc, because we know Doc is a player's coach. He's not the most hard on people. So someone's got to be in that locker room. And I think if Embiid's going to adopt that mentality and then, oh, by the way, I'm the most dominant player in the league and I'm pissed off because I didn't get MVP, a very dangerous Sixers team we're looking at, man.
Yeah, and I think this is the team people are going to think I have too high. Let's revisit this video in about a month from now. I think they are really set up to make a run here in these playoffs.
Let's hope, man.
We'll go to number 3. And that's the team I flip-flopped on overnight. That's the Golden State Warriors.
Overnight.
You have to remember that this was the best team in basketball basically until January. And since 2020 started, they got Klay Thompson back. That's a positive. but they saw Draymond Green get hurt for almost 2 months. They've seen Stephen Curry now miss 13 games in a row. He's going to be back, growing optimism. He's going to be on a minutes restriction early, Steve Kerr said, but I don't think they're too worried about the Denver Nuggets in the first round. Once this team gets back, once they start fully gelling, which probably shouldn't take long, they're going to become a very dangerous team. Klay has now, UBS said it yesterday, Klay's now with Draymond, out and in a reduced role when he came back because of a minutes restriction, with Steph Curry out. They've just been like, Klay, go take 20 shots, go get back in shape for these playoffs. And while he's maybe not to the level he was when he was playing every single night, year after year, and they were making championship runs, he's inching back to becoming Klay Thompson again. I think Steph Curry last year had the best season of his career, maybe. I mean, it's tough to look back when you factor in playoff success.
No, I don't mind you saying that. Yeah, I don't mind you saying that at all.
But playing the best basketball arguably was one of the best years of his career, top 3, no doubt, in my mind. And if he can find that juice again, it's only 2 months. If he can find that, come off of injury, back with Klay Thompson again, if they learn to play together again, I do still have the Suns higher, as you probably imagine by now. But the Warriors are right there with them. And this is a weak Western Conference playoffs. I mean, I had the Grizzlies at, 8? And that was the next team in the West. Everyone since then has been a team from the Eastern Conference. Like, it's really the Warriors and the Suns in my mind, and I'm really high on them now.
Yeah, they are who you think they are. Like, when you see Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green take the court together, they are who you think they are. And for what it's worth, they have an all-star starter on their team in Andrew Wiggins. They have a most improved player candidate, Jordan Poole, who's been playing great for them. They have who I believe is the next Sean Livingston role player for them in Juan Toscano Anderson, a guy who you don't game plan for, but if you don't pay attention to him, will be a reason the Warriors beat you. Like, they have all of that. Yeah. So if they get back to and they're led by their core, like I said last night in the pod, it's only a matter of feel for them. Give them a little bit of time to get back and get that rhythm back in the court, and it could look like 2017, 2018 again. Like it really could. That core just knows how to win basketball games together. They absolutely do.
And me having them at 3, kind of everything you say that's kind of validated in my mind as well. That's how I feel as well. And it's going to sound weird hearing me say this after the pod yesterday, but I've done my reflection. As I said, I've reflected.
People can change their minds. People can change
their minds. Yeah, I mean, I know.
You slept on it.
Yeah. So we'll move to 2. This is the Milwaukee Bucks. I think the Bucks, they're coming back NBA champions. They're coming back.
Scary.
Not all season they haven't just been like, oh, we're the champs. It's like, oh, let's do it again. And a lot of teams have, the second year is more fun. And the second year, especially, I mean, when teams back to back, the second year, the teams are oftentimes more dominant than they were that first time around. And the Bucks have shown no signs that they can't go and do this again. The East is stacked. Obviously, we've been talking about they're going to have to play the Bulls in the first round, which I think will be a good tune-up for them. Don't see them dropping more than 1 game in that series. And then it locks in with either the Celtics or the Nets. But you're looking at this team. I think Jrue Holiday is actually playing better than he did last year, which is crazy to say. Just one of the best vets in the league turning into very slept on, but also can turn it on. If Jrue Holiday is their second leading scorer and Chris Middleton isn't, the Bucks can still find a ton of success, which a lot of teams really don't have that type of third option. And, oh, by the way, they have Chris Middleton, who, we know, and we joked about it last playoff run. Yeah, there's going to be a Chris Middleton game where he just doesn't do anything in a playoff series. And, yeah, that might be true. But that happened last year, and it didn't matter. They won the championship. So not only do I think that those 2 guys are going to be a key role, and those 2 guys are 2 people you can count on, but I also think Giannis is currently the greatest basketball player in the world, has elevated his game from last year. Now he has that mid-range shot. Now, is taking 3-pointers more confidently. Not a good 3-point shooter still, but not a bad one. He's just average now. And that's really all you need when you can get a bucket in every other. Yeah, and you can get a bucket in every other way. So I'm high on this Bucks team. Best team in the East in my mind.
Yeah, Giannis proved to me last year that his game is playoff ready. There's no more of that. Giannis doesn't have a playoff game. Throw that out the window because he can do everything on the basketball court to the point where I don't even want to spend too much time talking about Giannis because we talked about him so much on the pod last night. And I don't get the Chris Middleton slander. No, he's not the most the sexiest player in the NBA. He's not the most electrifying player in the NBA. And he did go absent for 1 game in the finals last year. And then you know what he did the next game? He came back and gave me 40. So I'm done sleeping on Chris Middleton. That's Cash Money Middleton. He can get hot. at any moment. And there's just so much championship DNA inside the Bucks now. And Giannis did not let them get content. He really didn't, and he's leading by example. Like he's right back in the thick of it of an MVP race that he probably won't win, but right back in the thick of it of a DPOY race that no one would be surprised if he did win. Like he's right back in all of those spaces, and the Bucks just have all the opportunities to make and repeat as champions. You think they might have lost something with not having PJ Tucker? It doesn't seem to hurt them that much. Their defensive identity didn't change, and like whatever they were lacking in the beginning of the season, they got Brook Lopez back, who people don't want to admit how much Brook Lopez helps that team. Averaged 12-5 in the finals last year on, I believe, like close to like 50 or 45% from three or something stupid like that. Like he's
and he knows his role. And he knows exactly where he fits on this team.
Plays it well. So they're again another team that, just because they're not the one seed, it does not matter. They can win in any arena. They can win in any style. The Milwaukee Bucks are, one of the, if not the best team in the NBA. If you said they were the best team in the NBA, I'd have no qualms about it, to be honest.
I mean, you're looking at the NBA champions that kept the same exact core. Brook Lopez had some injury issues, but he's back. And I really think every other guy on the team got better. Bobby Portis, who I didn't mention, has taken a huge step too. So very, very dangerous team. We'll go to number one, which you know who it is, James. And it's your team. Hey, don't get all hyped, though. Don't get all hyped. But it is the Phoenix Suns. It's tough not to say they're the best team in basketball. The whole second half of the season they have been. Doesn't matter who's playing. Chris Paul has been hurt. Other guys have missed time, and they just win basketball games. It's tremendous to see a team that really, a team that people didn't think was supposed to be in the finals last year. A team that, people weren't expecting. And those type of teams you normally can see fizzle out in year two. I mean, it happened with the Heat 2 years back. And what did they do? They said, nah, we're the same guys and we're coming back, and now we're the best team in the NBA. They play great defense. The role players are getting better. Mikal Bridges is a defensive player of the year candidate. DeAndre Ayton young center, maybe didn't have the experience last year in the playoffs, didn't have the muscle. Maybe he's gotten bigger. His game is much more refined. He's no longer a liability on defense. He's actually a very helpful player on defense. Mm-hmm. And Devin Booker was one of the most slept on MVP candidates. Obviously was never going to win it, but he's 4 or 5 in this MVP race, right? So you have all that, and you have a guy of Chris Paul who just you can just have Chris Paul, and the foundation for your team is not at the bottom with all these other teams. It's like right here. He's not going to be the reason that pushes you over the edge to become a championship team. When you have all these other guys around you, you're now starting from here to get to a championship, and you're not, instead of down here, because you have Chris Paul. So they're the best team in the league. It's tough to say they're not, and they're playing in the weaker conference of the two. So this is my number one seed, no doubt.
Yeah, well, because they have Chris Paul, they're not going to turn the ball over in the playoffs. They're not going to get ahead of themselves. They're going to make every possession count, and that goes a mile when you're talking about playoff basketball. You have to maximize each possession. Chris Paul does that better than any team in the league. And yes, Devin Booker got his MVP consideration, and I'm glad he did, because it looked real scary when Chris Paul was going to be out the entire second half of the entire rest of the regular season after the All-Star break with that broken thumb. And Devin Booker didn't let them waver, didn't even let them have a chance to waver. It was great. And I'm glad I got those two out of the way, because that's not really who I want to talk about as to why I'm so high about the Suns. It is Mikal Bridges and DeAndre Ayton. Right. We know what we get with Chris Paul, and we know what we hope to get with Devin Booker. Let's see if he can be consistent, but we know what we can get. To see the improvement of those two guys, your third and fourth best player, really, that's what elevates the rest of your team. Like those two guys, if we saw just a big year from Chris Paul and Devin Booker and not anybody else, I wouldn't be as high, because my role players haven't stepped up. But just everything you said, Mikal Bridges being a legit defensive player of the year candidate, one of the best defenders in the league. And now DeAndre Ayton, I like the DeAndre Ayton matchup with anybody that's not named like Joel Embiid or Giannis Antetokounmpo. Like, I'd give him a fair shot against any other center in the league, or maybe Jokic too. But every other center, he's going to have to face. I give him the shot to not only hold his own, but maybe even win the matchup. And that's huge. That's not something that we could have said last year. In fact, it was the opposite. It was, we might have to win in spite of DeAndre and hope that he doesn't just, get absolutely eaten up inside. So it's great. Cam Johnson took a step this year. Cam Payne has been such a great backup point guard. Like it's still there for the Suns. And we talked about it a couple of episodes ago that they've sustained what everyone was wondering if they could do and not just be a flash in the pan last year. And they've proved that they are here to stay. It's another finals run for the Suns. And we may be looking at a repeat of the finals last year. And I don't think anybody would be surprised.
No, I think a lot of people kind of agree with that. I mean, maybe if you go through and pick it yourself, you'll have bias either way. But the Bucks and the Suns are undoubtedly two of the top 3 teams in the league, and you can't push them much further down than that. But before I outro this vid, James, I want to know who did you think I'm too low on this list? Who did you think I'm too high
on? I think you're a little. I'll start first. I think you're a little too low on the Heat. Like, okay. You have them at number 7, and we talked about why they're at number 7. But we can't forget that they're number 1 in the Eastern Conference. And
sure.
Basketball's not like football where you look at somebody's schedule and you'd be like, oh, they might have ducked some hard teams and it's helped them, or they're in a weak division, so they got some easy wins. Everybody plays everybody in the NBA. They've played the same teams that everybody else has played, and so they're still number 1 at the end of the day, even when it's been fought for. When other teams in the Eastern Conference have surged and gone down, they've stayed the course. There's a lot of championship DNA down there, not just with the Heat culture, but you add a champion in PJ Tucker. You add a champion and Kyle Lowry. They just know how to get it done in the playoffs. I think you're a little low. And then, man, I think you're a little too high on the Warriors.
Okay.
We talked about, that is a scary big 3. But it also is a big 3 that's only played 11 minutes together. It's also a bunch of role players who haven't made playoff runs and didn't get into the playoffs. So, I get that you don't want to respect what's there with them, but to put them above these other teams, like maybe the Boston Celtics or other teams like that come to mind, might be a little tough sell to some people.
Yeah,
maybe even the Sixers too. I don't disagree with how high you have the Sixers, but there are people out there who will call you a homer for having them number 4.
Oh, that's 100% the one that I'm going to get pushed back on. But James, I appreciate you hopping on the vid with us. That is going to be it. I want to know, everyone watching, if you're stayed till this point, let me know in the comment section down below. Who am I too high on? Who am I too low on? The same question I just asked James. Or did you just fully agree with my list, which I doubt many of you guys did.
Maybe.
That is it for the big boy, James Jackson. Appreciate you for hopping on. Go check out all our other content on the YouTube. Like I said at the top of this video, James has been pushing out content. I've been posting it. It's been a lot of fun this week. I like the grind we've been on. But I hope everyone's staying safe, staying healthy, and of course, getting buckets.